Welcome to the Fire and Earth podcast with your hosts, Jason Mefford and Kathy Gruver. Fire and Earth, giving you the keys to unlock your limitless potential.
Welcome to another edition of the Fire and Earth podcast. I'm your co-host, Jason Mefford.
And I'm Kathy Gruver, and we are so happy to have Jeanne Mozier back. She is going to tell us what's happening in 2019. Ooh, say welcome back, Jeanne. So good to have you back.
Thank you. And I have to say that for the past 2 years, when I do my annual Oracles lecture, I've been saying, I don't think I want to do this next year. I'm tired of doing nothing but bad news. and 2019, because it all really peaks. In December of 2019, January of 2020 are a decidedly difficult period.
Really?
Yes. Right. And, and again, we talked about cycles earlier. So when you do trends for sort of the general world, you look at those outer planets, Pluto, Neptune, Uranus, that move slowly, because a trend really needs at least a year to sort of establish itself. So those are the planets I look at, and we've been in a difficult period for about almost a decade now. And things are coming to a peak. And when people say, well, when is this all going to end? And when is it going to get better? I say, well, 2025. That's sort of the key date when it's like, oh yes, all of these things start new cycles and there's new stuff happening. So this is a difficult and challenging year. And one of the areas is the economy. And every time I listen to the news or the administration or the people talking about how wonderful the economy is and the stock market, I say two things. One, the stock market is not the economy. And two, trust me, by the end of the year, it's going to crash. And it's going to be hard. And things are becoming more austere. And they're tightening up. And, tariffs are a perfect Capricornian, because this is a very Capricorn year, are a very Capricornian action. No economist since 1920 thinks that tariffs work, and they definitely don't work, except that it's a Capricorn period. So it's the kind of thing that happens during this period. So people say, well, what should we do? What stock should I buy? I said, well, I think you should do two things. I think you should make sure you either are out there growing some of your own food, or you have neighbors who are growing some of your own food, and you should be prepared to do with less. Get rid of your debt, be solid, be safe, and be prepared for things to be shrinking.
Well,
that's one of the big issues that we're facing.
And I think that's interesting, because I have finance, accounting, business background, and it's the stock market, like you said, it's not the economy, but it definitely has a big impact on the economy, especially as trillions of dollars have gotten put into the stock market, really starting since late 80s, early 90s.
Right.
That it now has a much bigger impact on the total economy when things happen. And so the advice that you just gave about getting out of debt, being do with less and be more kind of self-sufficient,
right,
is the key. Because when 2008 happened, one of the reasons why that hit was so big was because people were over leveraged. And so when that happened, when all of a sudden the economy did start to go down, people were losing their jobs, and we had this trickle down effect. All the people that were super leveraged, were losing their homes.
Yep.
You know, they didn't have any. We've gotten into a very consumer-driven economy. I remember, you know, George W. Bush saying one time, you know, we're going to spend our way out of this recession.
Right.
You know, and encourage the American people to get out there and buy a bunch of shit, you know, because that's
Yeah.
going to get us out of the recession. And economically, yeah, that's how GDP works,
Yeah.
right? But it's not sustainable as we have seen.
Right.
So wise advice to, you know, not be over leveraged, try to be more self-sufficient, be willing to do with less, because we can still get by with less.
Right. And that was another one of my predictions. I should have my own TV show because I called the crash, you know, again, almost to the day. And in fact, the real estate crash, which happened about 8 months earlier, my sister was in Florida selling real estate. And I called her and I said, Barb, you will not sell another house after February 17th of whatever year it was, I don't know, 2008. And she didn't, and closed up her business and moved to Berkeley Springs. It was like, okay, there's somebody who's smart. So it's very disturbing, and particularly when what the stock market also does is create a huge psychological impact where
Oh, yeah.
people look at the stocks going up and it's like, look, people get a grip. What does that do for you again? Tell me.
It's
So,
all paper money until you sell it.
Right.
yeah, right.
It's that but it's that feeling. It's that, you know, when you get the you know, the ping that someone liked your Facebook page, you get that rush of, oh, my stocks are up today, you know, and that's
right.
false, because you're right. Unless you sell it, it's.
Right.
I remember when I had baseball cards as a kid, because I was that kid, and I remember I had some, like a rookie Ricky Henderson card, and I looked in the book and it was worth $22, and I was so excited. My dad goes, it's only worth $22 if you sell it to someone that'll pay you $22.
Right,
And as a kid, I'm like,
exactly.
but the book says it's worth $22. You know, I didn't know what the hell. But now, you get that now.
Yes.
Jeanne, one thing I remember you saying as I was listening to the CD of 2019 was that there are no planets in air. Is that what it was? There's no like
Correct.
logic and reason
No
and
planets
intelligence
in
right
air.
now.
That's right.
Tell
No
us what that
planets in air until, I don't know, sometime I think in 2021, something like that. So that means there's no reason out there. People are not reasoning. They're not being, you know, logical. And that really, if there is one villain, astrological villain in our current reality, it's Neptune, which is all about vague and dissolving boundaries. And it's been in Pisces, which is its own sign, which in itself is vague and boundaryless, since about 2012, no, maybe 20, you know, whatever it is, it ends in 2025, 14 years. So Pisces, Neptune in Pisces is all about things are not as they seem. Everything is true and nothing is true. Fake news is all about Neptune and Pisces. It's all the lies, it's all the vagueness, and that continues until 2025. And even more discouraging, so to speak, is the fact that Neptune in Pisces rules addiction and rules the current addiction epidemic. Again, it's not going to be gone till 2025. And we're going to lose basically an entire generation. And then the final thing is all of this madness. When you read about these horrific events, these mass shootings where everybody is looking around going, why did they do that? It's because people's mental boundaries are dissolving. And that makes them very susceptible to all of this garbage that's being put out there, that people who are reasoning and are capable of critical thinking might dismiss, but people who go in with weak brains and then have them weakened by Pisces can be swept away. And so when I read about those things, I say, demons are afoot, and they're out there permeating the weak consciousness. That's why it's important that people aren't out there saying all of this stuff. It's just So damaging. So that continues till 2025. That's an encouraging thing. One of the other big new cycles that started this year, actually had a little preview in 2018, has to do with the planet Uranus, which is all about upheaval and dramatic change. And it moved into the sign of Taurus, which is why we are entering a 7-year period of natural disasters, of earth upheavals. And we're going to, I mean, you can look at the news. The Midwest is underwater. There are huge floods in Africa. There are typhoons. It's like every day. And there are several problems related to that besides the crisis itself that link back into the economy. And, nobody's talking about who's paying for these disasters. How many insurance companies have to be on the edge when they're paying out these millions of dollars?
But when you lose an entire town in California,
oh yeah,
and now a lot of these people are having trouble with the insurance companies getting their house rebuilt and getting FEMA to help. I mean, it's a mess when you lose tens of thousands of homes in like a day.
Right.
So it's like, who is paying for that? That's
right. And it's going to exacerbate and alter the whole homeless crisis, because what do you do when people who have $500,000 homes are now homeless? They're not ready to move into a cardboard box under the interstate. So it changes the whole dynamic. And so homelessness is one of those areas that is going to be increasingly receiving intense focus during this period. So, people go, well, Judy, isn't there anything good happening this year? Now, Jupiter, which is the sugar daddy of the zodiac and always brings benefits and tends to expand everything. Jupiter, and it's got like a 13-month cycle, or a 13-month period in a particular sign. And it's really right on. When Jupiter was in Scorpio, which is all about sexuality and secrets being revealed, Jupiter moved into Scorpio literally 3 days before the Harvey Weinstein scandal was revealed, and the entire dynamic changed for a year, and I was like, wow, this is really something. And then when Jupiter moved into Sagittarius, the day after the midterm elections in 2018, it was like, okay, because Sagittarius is all about the quest for truth. It's all about investigations and, inquisitions. And that's all that's happened since then. I mean, it's like that's all that anybody talks about. And I thought, oh. And of course, Jupiter, because it's very expansive, can occasionally go too far.
I don't know what you're talking about.
No, I think, again, here's one of those things, right? Because like you said, I mean, the Harvey Weinstein issue and the Me Too movement and all of the, because you see this from a business perspective, all of the, sexual harassment issues that have come to light and all of the training and the other stuff. And now everybody's been talking about that and all these different things came out, right? Because Harvey was just the first one of a whole string of very public things that happened. And now, like you said, I mean, because from an investigation perspective, now all these things are being investigated. So it's going to be another year, a little over a year, you said 13-month cycle, when the focus is going to be more kind of on the investigation side of it.
Right.
And so just
sexual stuff too.
Oh yeah, it's broadened now because now it's anti-harassment in general, not just sexual
and
related.
Financial, and it's it's political, and it's all of it.
Yeah. So I guess as we sounds like 2019 might not be that great of a year.
It gets worse.
But it's I guess is because, like we said, these kind of everything goes in cycles, right?
Right.
I mean, if we, I'm just trying to I always try to kind of analogize or think about, what maybe period in our history before now was very much like now. So we can go back and kind of look at history on, what
Right.
happened during those time periods. Because I think, before on an earlier episode, we were talking about the Berlin Wall.
Right.
Berlin Wall went up at this particular time. It came down at this particular time. We're now in that other particular time, and we're talking about putting up another
Right.
wall.
Right.
So maybe what period of history is kind of very similar to what we're going into or going through.
Well, interestingly enough, because that, of course, I have a really strong historical background, and that's what I had done. Often I would go back and I'd look at all the past historical periods, except that within the past couple years, we have moved into what I call unprecedented time. So the collection or the assemblage of planets in particular signs literally has not ever been seen before. And so it's like, free time. Now, particular planets, like our friend Uranus moving into Taurus, the last time that happened was when Social Security was established
Mm-hmm.
in 1933, 34, whatever it was. And now here we are, and it really worries me because as a cycle is completed, what's going to happen is people are going to be looking at it again. Does it get improved? Does it get demolished? Does it get altered? So that's really one of the big patterns. Now, Saturn, which is really the quintessential trends planet, because it has this 28 and a half year cycle, total cycle, and it changes signs every 2.5 years. So one of the things you find with people like Kathy, who are very heavily Capricorn, is their life moves in 2.5 year cycles every time Saturn changes signs. So that's sort of one of the things. And Saturn is in Capricorn, just moved into Capricorn the end of 2017. And so that's part of this sort of mosh of Capricornian energy, which by January of 2020 includes just about all of the planets. And about a year ago, I had an astrology group from Taiwan contact me and said, "Oh, we'd like you to do a podcast lecture to our group in Taiwan." I was like, "What? Oh, okay." So they were very concerned, and obviously they had been looking at things, and they said to me, "Well, what's going to happen in 2020?" Well, usually I don't look ahead that far. I'm confused enough living a year in advance. If I lived 3 years in advance, I'd be totally confused. But I did. I looked at it all and I thought, oh my God, January of 2020 is not good at all. And so I said, well, they said, does it look like war? I said, well, it's very possible. Very possible, January 2020, and it looks like war in East Asia. So they were right in the middle of it. They obviously had been looking at it and wanted somebody else to confirm it for them.
Yeah.
So, things are going to be building in that direction. And again, it's not hard to see that happening for anybody who's not objectively looking at things.
Yeah.
So when you talk, and I know that because this is fascinating, so you talk about when you're looking at what's happening in this country and what's happening sort of more globally, you use the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence?
In this country, I use the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence. The Declaration of Independence refers to the American people. The Constitution refers to the American government. Now, one of the really interesting things, and I sort of realized it, I don't know why I hadn't realized it before, but the chart for the inauguration of the president generally represents the path of the administration during those 4 years. And I remember, Obama had a terrible chart for his first term. And of course, he went through this whole process of appointing people. They turned him down, he lost them. And the only one who went smoothly was Hillary Clinton, because of course, she has an astrologer, I'm assuming. She has an astrologer. She waited until Mercury was moving direct to accept and to get sworn in. So as I was looking at the inauguration in 2017, I realized that it's based on, of course, the date that the inauguration occurs, and it doesn't matter who the president is. That's going to be the pattern. And the pattern setup of the inauguration is all about legal problem. This particular inauguration, legal problems, all of these crises that we've seen unfolding. And I thought, boy, Hillary's lucky that she didn't win, or it would be her in the line of fire instead of Trump in the line of fire. So both the Constitution charts and the Constitution chart and the Declaration of Independence chart, meaning the United States, are both in a difficult and challenging economic position, which just sort of reinforces all of that Capricorn energy. And that's what, that's why I feel confident in saying, trust me, people, really, I have no skin in this game except to say, this is what the stars say.
Ouch.
Well, yeah.
Yeah,
And it's interesting. I mean, as we go through this, because it's, and while we may not be, obviously we cannot control what goes on across the world. We're not the president or, the prime minister, or whoever of these different countries. It's going to be the ones that are actually deciding and making those decisions. But we do have control over us personally, right? And so again, it's because I've dealt a lot with risk management from a business side, right? And so a lot of these things that you're talking about, it's like, yep. If you're watching from a risk management side, it's like 2008, no surprise to me either, right? I wasn't reading the stars, but I was seeing what was going on in the economy.
Right.
I could tell that was going to happen. And I know that when this next thing happens, which is probably going to be sometime in 19 or early 20, it's going to probably be worse than 2008 was, because the problem is, debt and everything else has gone up even more than it was, and a lot of the things can evaporate very quickly. But to try to, because obviously we don't want to leave the listeners on this, oh man, this sucks, I might as well just go back to bed, never get out of bed, right? But it's about what we can do as individuals as well, because again, even kind of from a risk management perspective, every time an event happens, it is a threat to some people, but it is an opportunity to other people. Okay, there's both sides of it. And so like we'll take the natural disasters issue. It really sucks for the people that lose their home, they get flooded out, but it's good for the people who build houses and who do disaster cleanup, right? And so even though the event, we have to kind of decide and maybe make some decisions for ourselves to make sure that we get to be on more of the opportunity side and kind of protect us in our little individual bubble. And so, some of the things that you talked about early, like trying to get out of debt, simplifying your life so that it doesn't require as much money to get by. Because for me growing up, right? I mean, I grew up, it was the recession in the late 70s, early 80s in the housing. My father was a contractor. We had to get by with a lot less, right? Because we had some big housing projects that went bust, and we did grow a lot of our own food. And I don't know, honestly, how my parents got by, but we did.
Mhm.
And a lot of it was because we didn't have the debt. We were growing some of our own food. We were doing some of these things to help us be more
Right.
self-sufficient.
Right.
And so again, for people to be thinking about ways that you can do that, it's going to be different for everybody, but realize that, we went through a major depression before. We went through a major recession. People are resilient, right? It just helps us in knowing what's probably coming because we can
Right.
start preparing now.
Right.
Come late 2019, early 2020, a lot of people are going to wake up and go, what the hell just happened?
Right. Exactly.
Okay. But
And you
if
need
if
to
you
know
had a
your
6 or 9 month lead,
Yeah.
hey,
Yes. Right.
who's ahead, right?
Right.
Because I'll tell you, during the depression, a lot of people had it bad, but a lot of people made a ton of money. During the Second World War, it sucked for a lot of America who was fighting and who was, doing all this other stuff. There were people that made a ton of money
Yes.
during the Second World War, right? And so not to think that it's, try to find where or what the opportunities are for you, as well, to try to make the best of a
Mm.
bad situation.
Right.
And no,
And
it's
I
a
think
cycle, and that cycle will at some point end. So sometimes we just have to hold on tight
right.
and write it out.
Yeah.
Right. And I think one of the really crucial things, and as you were saying, Jason, with the natural disasters, one of the benefits inevitably you hear about is people helping other people.
Oh yeah.
And that's really what people need to cultivate is knowing your neighbors, understanding your community, how you can help each other. Because that's going to become critically important. So every time I give my talks, I have all these people going, well, so Jeanne, what do you think about my moving to Berkeley Springs? And I say, well, the important thing about Berkeley Springs is we have these fabulous waters, the spring waters, that are not going to be damaged because they're millions of years old. They're deep in the ground. So, that's going to be there. So
And
people,
Berkeley Springs is amazing if you've never been there. It's
in many ways.
freaking amazing. It's freaking amazing. So we just have a couple minutes left. Okay, so any final words about what's coming in the near future, Jeanne, that we need to be aware of?
Well, I always like to finish my talks with fashion and culture.
Ooh.
And with all the Capricorn, it was like, oh, things are very name brand, things are very boring. But
Hey,
Jupiter moving into Sagittarius, all those casual clothes are coming back where they weren't last year. So, there's a good casual thread through 2019. What we're really going to see, and because movies are my business, is how the movies reflect the astrological shifts. So there'll be a few superhero movies dribbling because it's the Sagittarian energy, but mostly we're going to see, as we have seen, movies that say based on a true story. I mean, that's the trend. And they're not going to be necessarily happy true stories. So those are my two trends that I like to give people a little smile about.
yeah, good movies.
I'm all
more,
for less
more,
superhero movies
more casual clothes. Oh, come
and
on.
more
I
casual
like
clothes.
formal suits.
Casual clothes, yeah.
My Capricorn clothes. Anyway, good. Oh, this was so exciting. So, Jeanne, if people want to know more about what's happening in 2019, and I know you do talk a bit on the CD about 2020 and 2025
Right.
because those are some big trends. How do
Right.
they reach you, and how do they get this info?
They can go to my website. There should be a place on there that says, how do you order? And that's starwv.com. If you're not able to maneuver that, then you can just email me directly. I'm star@starwv.com. And I'll tell you, send me a check at this address and I'll send you a CD. And it's a 90-minute CD and it's $20.
And packed with info. Like I said, I listened to it twice because
Yes.
it's like you have to just
Yes.
sort of grasp all of it. And I take notes because you also go through each individual sign. So you
Yes.
said, what's coming for Capricorn, what's coming for Leo, what's coming,
Right.
so that's really useful for me as a Capricorn, and it kind of helped set out what my year was going to look like. So really
Right.
valuable info, and it's helping me make business decisions and relationship
Good.
decisions. And, Why
and then
not
I do
have more info?
I do a month by month too, and key days for certain things. And so everybody should feel relieved now that Mercury is out of retrograde as of yesterday. And so by the beginning of April, things will move forward again. You can make those deals. You can, just buy. Don't ever buy a computer or a car when Mercury is retrograde, because, it will be a mess.
And it's actually, I just want to share something about that. I just signed with a speakers bureau, and I'm really excited about that. And she and I were going over some stuff yesterday, and I said, how's business? What's going on? She goes, oh, I'm so frustrated. For like 2 weeks, these people sat on these 2 contracts and nothing was happening. And I was saying, and I'm just laughing. And she goes, I was just getting so pissed. And I finally, yesterday, and it was the day Mercury was, I finally said, you have till 5 o'clock today to sign these contracts. And I am laughing my ass off. And we were just on the phone, so she couldn't see my face. She goes, why are you laughing? And I said, oh, honey. I said, for the last couple of weeks, Mercury's been retrograde. It just shifted today. She goes, I just got the contracts in. I said, yeah, of course you did.
And she should be happy that she didn't have all those contracts being signed and then have them fall through.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway.
I actually had a very similar discussion with one of my clients too. They're like, I don't know what it is about March, but nothing's really happened in March.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, it's all about Mercury. That damn
Mercury.
planet. Anyway, thank you, Jeanne, so much for being here. You gave us such great info. Thrilled to have you. I'm Kathy Gruver. I can be reached at kathygruver.com.
And I'm Jason Mefford. I can be reached at jasonmefford.com. So thanks again for listening to today's episode, and we'll catch you on a future episode of the Fire and Earth podcast.
Take care, everybody.